When have you seen the real world hit a spoiled brat? When the high school principal's daughter, who previously got away with all kinds of garbage behavior, vandalism, dinking, major bullying, got caught vandalizing a lecture hall in uni, she was unceremoniously dumped and banned. Parents whined for months on FB about their poor baby's unfair treatment and the fact that her applications to other unis were being denied. Spending $50 on food a day is not normal. College girl got cut off from her parents, drinking and not going to class, and had to get a job. She put on Facebook about how she's gonna go hungry and needs money. People offered her food and to make her dinner. She said, "That's okay, I just need about $40 to get through the day, I don't like to grocery shop." Sorry about the length. I was a school bus driver in the 70s. During height of court-ordered busing. So I ferried poor kids to the rich side of town. Then rich kids the other way. Lots of entitled brats, but one stands out. Super entitled kid. Constantly defying rules. Eventually I caught him, with too many witnesses, attempting to set a bus seat on fire with his lighter. School officials were called. Hearing with officials and rich dad, and he's banned from all buses rest of semester. Dad offers to pay for the damage and quietly accepts the punishment. Then comes the surprise. Next morning when I arrive at 6 AM to clean my bus, regular task every morning. Rich kid and dad are standing there. Dad introduces me to my new personal bus cleaner for the rest of the year. He brings kid every morning and forces him to wash and clean the floors on my bus before taking him on to his school. By end of year, entitled kid is actually working hard and being friendly. We're getting along pretty well and I help him out sometimes so he can get onto school. Kid turns out okay when all is over. Good move by his dad. When I was working at a public library, we had a few local celebrities come in from time to time. Most of them were nice. But one had a real stick up his ass. He would bitch about having to stand in line. And about late fees. And about everything else. We would just say sorry. Those are the rules, or thank you for being patient, even though he wasn't. One day, he and I were apparently both having a bad day. And when I told him there was a limit on how many DVDs or video games he could check out at a time, he slammed his hands on the desk and raged. "Do you know who I am?" Exclamation point. This is a grown-ass man. Mind. I was a little college student who barely looked old enough to drive. I was sick of his low-key bullying. So I just looked at him and said, "Yes, I do. MRX. And the rules still apply to you. Which of these would you like me to put back?" He was stunned. I don't think anyone had ever actually told him that the rules for everyone else did in fact apply to him as well. He was a little nicer after that. Not a lot nicer. But still. When my brother was in school, he was horrifically bullied for being autistic. And his bully was the most entitled little poop I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. His father paid for boxing practice, karate lessons, and other martial arts. This made him think that he was the best at anything physical. My brother isn't overly fond of sports and prefers to read in the library. As the typical nerdy kid, he's a prime target for bullies. One day when the bully had cornered my brother up against a wall, my brother finally decided that he wasn't just going to take it anymore, but he strongly dislikes violence, and thus would not be fighting back. Instead, when the bully tried to punch him, my brother ducked. 3 broken fingers and a trip to the hospital later. The bully's father finds out what had been happening. All his extra classes training were cancelled. He had all of his electronics and games sold. And if he wanted to have a car, he would have to work for every penny himself. In the 6th grade, my teacher was this tough older Scottish woman with a very thick accent who probably led battalions in World War II. She terrified me and I adored her. One of my classmates was this snotty brat who constantly bragged that she never had to do chores or homework, and always got her parents to do her work for her. One day, we had a book report due, The book report was supposed to be 2 pages. And for some reason this girl wasn't able to get her parents to do her work for her on this one occasion. She came in and turned in a book report only 1 sentence long. Our teacher looked like she was about to rip this girl in half. She held up the book report and said loud enough for the entire class to hear, "Are ye an idiot?" Exclamation point. One of my favorite things about the military is that in a uniform, nobody can tell how privileged or unprivileged you might have been. It's a total blank slate. And for many, it's humbling to not get to have to wear your social status on your sleeve. On my second ship, there was an E2 who grew up very wealthy and was an ass about it. He wasn't afraid to let us know. He thought that he was better than his peers. There's a stereotype of the enlisted guy who thinks of himself as an officer as a way to pretend that means anything. That's this guy in every way, and he would try to get out of poop enlisted work because he was going to be an officer. Probably even a commanding officer of a ship. So there we were, a few hours into his first deployment, and this motherfucker gets violently seasick. It lasted for days. I don't know if you've ever been around someone who can't open their eyes without yakking. But it's awful. You really feel bad for them. It's hard to watch someone go through. Not with this guy. When I joined the army, guy who had the infantry tattooed on him didn't even last 2 weeks in basic training. He cried and yelled I shouldn't have to get yelled at to do something. My friend has this entitled younger brother who acts like the world revolves around him, while his dad is stern with him. His mom babies this behavior, and he can get away scot-free with almost anything. He gets angry very easily, and even at the slightest things. I was over at my friend's house, and while we were downstairs, we heard a loud crash from his brother's room. It turns out he was playing Fortnite on his TV, and threw the controller into the glass table, which shattered. My friend called me later in the day over Discord, and told me how after his dad came back, he grounded his brother for a month, and he wasn't allowed to play video games or go over to a friend's house. He had to pay for a new table with his allowance, and had to do chores. He got what he deserved. I will admit that I was a bit spoiled growing up, though I didn't think I was a brat. My mom had a maid that came in several times a week. When I went to college, several things were very different for me. I knew to clean up after myself, but cleaning a bathroom was completely new. The biggest shock was laundry. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing or how. I knew I was supposed to use detergent and softener, but I thought any soap would do and didn't know what softener was. I had no idea how or when to add them either. Reality hit when a campus security guard came in and I asked how much of the dish soap I was supposed to use, and the man started laughing. He did help me get the right soap after and explained how to operate a washer and dryer. My younger brother just got his first job. He has always been my parents' baby and favorite. His boss is not tolerating his stupid, self-centered, spoiled bullpoop. Traffic jam. Someone uses shoulder to skip ahead and save time, because they're more important than everyone else. Gets pulled over very quickly afterwards. Seen a couple videos of it, but saw it with my own eyes a few weeks ago. It was a beautiful thing. When I was in high school, there was this horribly bratty rich kid who loved to pick on others, push people around, and play the "do you know who my dad is?" card a lot. Let's call him Todd. I hated this kid all through school. Final year of high school, I'd had a bad day one day, and it obviously showed. Todd sees me walking in the hall and makes some snide remark about my shirt. I promptly tell him to shove it, as I am not in the mood. He walks over to me while I am at my locker and slams my locker door, and shoves me. I recall that he said something else, but I honestly don't remember what it was. I just remember that I saw red, and drove my fist into his nose like a truck. I stomped away all teenage and angsty. Got called to the office the next day. Todd is sitting there, with his father, and the principal. I knew I was fricked. The principal shows us all the security camera footage of what went down. I am assuming an expulsion is coming my way. When Todd's father puts his hand on my shoulder and smiles. He tells Todd to say thank you. And we both look at him dumbfounded. Why would I thank him? He broke my nose, says Todd. His father responds with, because if I had been there and seen you act like that, I'd have killed you. He stood up and left and I was excused to return to class. Todd never bothered me again. My dad owns a bar. And one night there was this rich kid with his friends. Boat shoes without socks. The whole thing. He was giving one of the bartenders a tough time because he was on the shorter side. This kid was bothering the bartender for about half an hour until finally he got my dad to come out. My dad basically yelled at the kid about how the bartender enlisted in the military and fought in Afghanistan and how ashamed he should be to make fun of an honest, hard-working veteran for his height. The kid left the bar nearly crying. And I hope that experience helped him change for the better. I had a girl try to rent a house I had. She was late 20s and gave off a bad vibe. She requested that several lights in the house be changed, argued with me about the basement, and demanded a new refrigerator because someone else used this one. It's gross. She also said it shouldn't be a problem to rent to me. My daddy makes a lot of money. I went back and ran her application. She had been evicted from her last 3 houses. Her credit score was the lowest I had ever seen. She sent in her father's pay stubs. I called her previous landlord, and she would destroy the house, get evicted. Her father would pay the damages and the remainder of the rent, and she would move on. I called to deny her, and she was flabbergasted. I think I may have said I wouldn't let you borrow my pen even if it was on a chain when she repeated that her daddy made a lot of money. She will probably never be able to rent anywhere ever again. When it hit me, I grew up in a very financially stable, loving household. My parents aimed to raise me to be smart with my money, since that's pretty much the main way they built such a good life for themselves, and I took it completely for granted. Never had to hold down a job since they would still provide for all of my necessities. Never worried about being more frugal, shopping store brand even though my mom did. Thinking about wants vs needs, etc. Dart. I was stupid. I was spoiled because my parents weren't very hard on me because of my crippling anxiety and depression. I was a brat because I looked down on poor people like, wow, you really can't afford gas? Question mark. Save your money. Dumbus. Then I moved out when I was 20. I had to get a job to pay for stuff. And much to my dismay I couldn't just quit when it got tiring or difficult. I had to become more frugal and I was humbled every time my boyfriend covered my share of bills when I didn't have enough money despite trying my best to save. He grew up way smarter about money than I did for sure. I've definitely become stronger and smarter. But I owe an apology to less fortunate friends I had growing up that would probably be thrilled to know that the real world has finally hit me. When I went to U.S. Army basic training. That's where it hits most people. One in particular was indeed spoiled. She was one of those daddy is important type gals. According to my battle buddies, she doesn't clean or know how to do laundry. Oh, the attitude. She gave so much attitude. Week 5 and the drill sergeants had enough. We formed up and, as you can guess, called her out. The females were told to watch here and to adjust her attitude. After weeks of struggling to do basic chores, she started to improve. Week 9 and she is everyone's friend. Basic training will make or break you. And in this case it made her to become a better person. I worked with a girl who was completely entitled to everything. She was a pretty blonde girl who was reaching her 40s and not so pretty anymore. She was impossible to be around and talk to. She was always right. Had no clue how the real world worked. And always made excuses. I treated her like anyone else I worked with and would not do her work for her. She went to our boss weekly because I was treating her unfairly because I refused to do her work after I got mine done. while she painted her nails and made personal phone calls. She was furious when I was promoted over her. Then we hit the recession of 2008 and I was laid off. She got my job and quit within 3 weeks because she could not handle the pressure. I wonder where she is now and if she is going through the bar circuit trying to find some loser to pay her rent for the month. She bragged about doing this and was pissed when a month came around where she had to pay her own rent.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.